We're honored to be joined today by Yair Lapid, member of Knesset and chairman of the Yesh Atid-Telem party and Israel's leader of opposition. Yair, it's great to have you with us. You've been highly critical of the government throughout this period, especially when it comes to the management of the COVID-19, of the coronavirus crisis. On the other hand, we see that the Prime Minister has managed to bring historic peace deals for Israel. So are things really as bad as you and the opposition would make them out to be?
Well, it's not me and the opposition, it's the Israeli public, it's the infection rates, it's the numbers of the economy. There's no way of hiding from the fact that this government and this Prime Minister has completely failed in handling the COVID-19 crisis. I mean, if you look at our unemployment rate, which is more than a double than the one of Europe, if you look at the fact that we are a red state, while the majority of European countries are green states, if you look at the fact that we are the first country on earth to go to a second lockdown, these are all signs to the same phenomena, which is this government failed. You know, usually Israel is a unique case. I mean, Israel is a small country in the Middle East, Western civilization in the wrong part of the globe, and so on and so forth. Here, we're not that unique. The virus is the same virus all over. The rules of economy during a crisis are the same rules. So there's only one factor which varies from one country to another.
Leadership.
Governments.
So where'd they mess up? What could they have done differently?
Everything. Everything. I mean, the first thing they did was locking the country down was a good thing. And from then on, it needs management. It needs to be handled. You have to make sure that you have handled differently the general public from groups that are in danger, like the elderly or people.
The higher risk categories.
The higher risk categories. You have to make sure, for example, they took the wrong path on the unemployment, giving everybody money until June 2021, instead of making sure they pass the money through the employers, like they did in Germany and other places, in order to reduce the unemployment rate. So everything, it was a cascade of bad decisions.
But the reason behind it is it's a bad government. Netanyahu's incompetent. His trial is taking up too much of his time. He doesn't care. What is, if you had to put your finger on it?
All of the above. I mean, look at the first one. What the first thing they did is forming a government of 36 ministers and 16 deputy ministers, a bureaucratic monster. For example, I mentioned unemployment. There are 4 different ministries. The Ministry of Economy, the Ministry of Finance, the Prime Minister's office, and the Ministry of Welfare, who claim to be in charge of unemployment, of dealing with unemployment. This is ridiculous.
Practically no one's in charge. But what would, if you were Prime Minister right now, what would you do differently?
A, form a government that is 18 ministries the most, thin, lean, efficient, smart, manageable. Then focusing on the groups that are at risk, and having and changing the unemployment, the whole way of handling unemployment. I'll give you another example. Using the Ministry of Defense, which is the right body for emergencies. I mean, they are the one who prepared. The only reason they didn't do so is politics, because at the beginning, Bennett was the Minister of Defense. He didn't want to give him credit. Then Katz became the Minister of Defense. He didn't want to give him credit.
So it's politics over pandemic.
It's all about politics, and it's all about who's responsible and who's trying to get away from responsibility. And mostly, it's bad management of somebody who's been in power for way too long and is not capable anymore of running a country in times of crisis.
I want to turn for a moment to the U.S. elections. They're coming up. The Prime Minister was in Washington last week, and it was quite surprising to me. He was there for 2 days plus, meetings with Trump, lots of, the festivities at the White House. Not a phone call, not a meeting, not with Joe Biden, not with Kamala Harris. No outreach across the aisle. That's damaging to the state of Israel, no?
It's against the tradition. I mean, usually when an Israeli Prime Minister goes to Washington, that close to an election, he would call both candidates. But this is part of a bigger problem. The bigger problem is, under Netanyahu, Israel is not a bipartisan issue anymore. Israel has become branch of the Republican Party. Now, the Republican Party is, of course, I have only great things to say about their obligation to Israel, but so are the Democrats. And Trump is a great friend of Israel. Look at Biden's record in Senate. In votes that has to do with Israel, it's impeccable.
Right. So
here are two great friends of Israel, who are, one is the president, one is the candidate, and the prime minister doesn't even make a phone call. They said, I know, they say it's 2 hours drive. First of all, you drive 2 hours for somebody who might be the next president of the United States, and you don't install them. But again, they made the mistake of moving Israel away from the principle of bipartisanship that was almost wholly in Israel foreign policies. So it's a terrible mistake, and it also has to do with the fact that the people who are running Netanyahu's policies towards the United States are also great big donors of the Republican Party, and therefore he's doing what he's told. And this is wrong for Israel.
You're referring specifically to Sheldon Adelson?
Not only. I'm saying in coming November the 4th, we might be in a situation in which the president is a Democrat, Congress almost sure is going to be a Democratic Congress, Senate probably is going to be a Democratic Senate. So we might have a situation which is rare, in which the administration, Senate, and Congress all three of them are going to be Democrats. And these are Democrats who are extremely angry at Israel's current government. So either we pray for this not to happen, or we change the government. I keep great contact with the Democrats and the Republicans as well, as we all should.
On changing the government, just quickly, December, Israel goes to a new election. You're confident that that's going to happen, and then come March, whenever those elections are, you're confident that you'll win?
No and no, but it's one is, first of all, the first one is probable, or at least this is everybody's gamble right now. Listen, the one thing we all know is there's no way on earth Netanyahu is going to one day call Benny Gantz and said, okay, I'm giving you the torch and you're going to be the next prime minister because I'm fulfilling my promise and on the rotation. This is not going to happen. Nobody thinks it's going to happen. And when I say nobody, this includes Benny Gantz's family, and Gabi Ashkenazi. We all know it's not going to happen. By the way, not with the kind of poor support Gantz have in the general public.
Right.
And the only reason he's got poor support in the general public is because he's the one in charge of Netanyahu's being in power. He made him prime minister. And therefore, by law, we will need to go to election in December. So it's everybody's gamble.
That's what's going to happen.
But no, so many predictions in the last year has.
Well, that's what we've learned.
Yes,
It's in Israeli politics, you never know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for the other part of it, I don't know if I'm the one who's going to win the election, but it's going to be either me or him. This is going to be the race.
Okay. Yair Lapid, leader of opposition, chairman of Yesh Atid-Telem, thank you very much for being at the Jerusalem Post conference.